How does a story begin? Is it with a whisper or a wave, a puff of air or a gust of wind? Does a story begin before we even know it's there? Picture for a moment that you are walking through deep snow. The flakes are falling heavily, piling up around your boots. All around you, the world is still, silent, empty. Above you, the sky is a vast, unending white. You walk on, and the snow crunches under your feet. Then a bird cries out, and the sound echoes across the emptiness. You stop walking, you listen, and then you start walking again. Slowly at first, then faster and faster until the wind is whipping through your hair and you are running full speed ahead. We are the Apache people. We are listeners. We were taught long ago to listen to the wind in the trees, the water over the rocks, the animals as they move through the world. We learned that the world is full of stories, and we let the wind carry those stories to us. We are a people shaped more by story than by stone, more by song than by sweat. Our legends tell us who we are and where we come from. They tell us where we are going. For us, the past is never really past. It's always here, all around us, if we have the ears to hear it. They came from the north. That's all I remember from the story. That and the feel of the endless snow under my moccasins and the crunch of my footsteps in the deep powder. We had walked for what seemed like forever. It was a hard journey. We followed the old trail, the one that the others had walked before us, the one our grandparents walked before they became our grandparents. The story has been passed down for hundreds of winters. It survives in the songs we sing, in the smoke that curls from our fires, in the memories we keep alive. It is a story of two roads, of a journey, of beginnings and endings, and everything in between. This is the story of how we, the Apache people, found our way home. It's a cold night. The stars are sharp points of light against the dark. The fire crackles and pops. You shift restlessly on your blankets. The firelight dances in your eyes, throwing strange shadows on the tent walls. Your grandfather stirs the fire with a long stick. He doesn't look up when he asks, "What does it mean to be guided? Do the stars guide the lost? Do they lead travelers safely home? Or do the stars just shine their cold, hard light on everyone, lost or not?" You snuggle deeper into your blanket, pull your knees up to your chest and stare at the flames. Who whispers in the wind? Who tells the stories of the snow and the stars? Who guides the lost and the found? Your grandfather's voice is low and rumbling like the distant sound of thunder. His words are slow and careful like the steps of a hunter. He says, "When the world is still, we must listen closely. The wind may carry a whisper to those who have ears to hear." He looks up at the sky, his face half hidden in the shadows. The firelight glints off his silver hair, turning it to spun gold. He turns back to you, his eyes shining like coals. He says, "From the first day we were born, we have listened to these stories. We have walked for generations following the stories. Now we walk from the snow to the sun, from the silence to the story." And so the story begins. From the very first moment we knew we wanted to share these stories with you. We knew we wanted you to join us on our journey. So we ask you now, will you take a moment to subscribe to our channel? It takes just a second and helps us keep making new stories. What time is it where you are? What is your favorite bedtime snack? Leave us a comment and let us know. Now let us begin this slow walk south. Let the firelight lead the way and the starlight keep us safe. Let the stories carry you away and the memories bring you home. Welcome to our channel, and now let's jump into it. Chapter 1, The Frozen Beginning. There was once a time when the world had no people on it. This is a myth of creation from the Apache tribe. Now, keep in mind, myths are stories that are meant to explain the way things are in our world, but they don't always align with historical accounts or what scholars believe happened in the past. They're a great source of insight into a culture, but shouldn't be considered 100% accurate. So back to our story. In this beginning time, everything was frozen and covered in ice. The land was cold and empty, flat and bare. Nothing moved across the face of the earth. But in this stillness, there were voices. Yes, there were voices that echoed across the emptiness, and they belonged to the elders. They sat hunched over and spoke to the wind, though there was no wind to carry their words. They spoke into the cold silence of an empty world and hoped that somehow something would hear them. They told stories into the frozen void. They sang songs of bravery and strength. They told jokes and riddles, each word echoing across the barren landscape, and still nothing stirred. Then one day, two young children were playing by the riverbank. It was still winter and the river was frozen solid, but the children pretended it flowed with water and made believe they were sailing across its surface. The children heard the elders telling stories into the wind, and so they stopped their game and listened intently. After a while, they went to the elders and asked them what they were doing. The elders said, "We are calling out to the spirits who might hear us and bring us the gift of life." The children shook their heads. "You're going about it the wrong way," they said to the elders. "We know how to call the spirits. Come with us." The children ran down to the frozen river and shouted into the frozen wasteland, "Spirit, spirit, where are you? We know you are near. Spirit, spirit, where are you? We want you to come here." And then they waited. A moment passed, then another, and suddenly, a wind began to stir across the land. The elders gasped, and sure enough, the wind carried with it the sound of voices. Spirits had heard their call and were answering. The children clapped their hands and danced in the wind, laughing and playing, as the spirits came closer and closer. One by one, they alighted on the children, entered their bodies and gave them life. Soon, the children were running and jumping all over the place, and with each leap, more life was breathed into the world. As the last spirit arrived, it landed on the shoulder of one of the children and whispered in its ear, "Your people will always remember to listen for my voice in the wind, for I will walk among them from generation to generation." Then the spirit vanished, and in its place sat a coyote. The coyote looked at the humans and barked once, twice, 3 times, and with each bark, the world began to change. In an instant, mountains rose and forests grew, rivers flowed and meadows bloomed. The animals and birds came pouring out of the mountains and the holes in the ground, filling the air with songs and the earth with life. The plants reached up out of the soil, eager to greet the sun, and as the coyote howled one last time, the humans felt a profound sense of belonging to this land, to these creatures, and to each other. The coyote had brought them all together, and so the ancestors stayed on that land, raising their families, living off the bounty of the earth and making music with the animals until one day the time came for them to journey to the south. They followed the winding river for many moons until they reached a lake wider than any they had seen before. In the middle of the lake sat an island covered in cornfields and gardens overflowing with fruit. The ancestors crossed the lake and made camp on the island, settling in and naming it after the coyote, their teacher and friend. They called it Azdaha, which means Coyote Place. Then they sent a boy to the south to see what lay beyond. The boy traveled over mountains and through valleys, past swift rivers and deep canyons until he saw smoke rising in the distance. He approached the camp cautiously, hiding behind a rock to observe those who lived there. There he saw human beings just like him, gathered around a fire and speaking in a language he didn't understand. Feeling hungry and thirsty, the boy couldn't help but approach them. "Could you please give me some food and water?" he asked. The strangers welcomed the boy into their circle and gave him what he wanted. Then they asked him questions about his people and the land to the north. When the boy told them there were no people in the north, only animals, the strangers looked grave. "It would be dangerous for you to return home," they said. "If there are no humans to protect you, evil spirits might harm you on the way." The boy thought for a moment. "I'll be careful," he promised. "But if anything happens to me, know that my people will come after me." With that, he turned and walked away. He returned to the ancestors, warning them about the dangers that lurked to the south. Together they decided to stay in Ashtaha, and so they did, living peacefully in their coyote place until one night, when a terrible storm swept across the land. Torrential rains fell from the sky, winds roared across the mountains, and thunder boomed louder than any noise the humans had ever heard. Flashes of lightning illuminated the darkness, revealing a raging river that had formed in the valley. As the rain continued to fall, the river grew wider and deeper, threatening to wash away their homes. Terrified, the humans huddled together and called out to the coyote for help, but no answer came. The coyote had gone away, leaving them to face the storm alone. Just when they thought they could bear it no longer, the sky cracked open and a giant emerged. The giant had skin as dark as the clouds and hair that flowed like the river. His eyes shone like lightning, and his booming voice echoed the thunder. Taking pity on the humans, the giant scooped up the earth with his massive hands and placed it on the highest mountain peak, saving them from the rising waters. Then, as quickly as it started, the storm ceased. The giant vanished, leaving the humans alone on their dry island once again. Shaken but unharmed, the humans searched for signs of the coyote, but he was nowhere to be found. Only his tracks remained imprinted in the soft earth. Confused and frightened, they wandered across the land, calling out his name until they came to a wide canyon. Standing on the edge, they looked down into the chasm and saw their lost teacher waiting for them. The coyote explained that the giant was his brother, and that he had sent him to test the humans. "I wanted to see if you would share your food and water with those in need, welcome strangers into your homes, and care for each other during hard times. Your willingness to do these things will determine whether you stay here permanently or must continue moving to the south. The humans looked at each other, ashamed that they had failed the giant's test. Please give us another chance, they begged the coyote. Show us what we must do to pass your brother's test. The coyote nodded and led them back to the village. This is what you must do, he said. Each of you will build a house. Its roof will be made of cedar branches, its walls of mats woven from reeds, and its floor of planks cut from cottonwood trees. When your houses are finished, I will return to check on your progress. The humans thanked the coyote and got to work. They cut down trees, wove reeds into mats, and assembled their homes as quickly as they could. But when the coyote returned to inspect their work, he shook his head sadly. You have built shelters, but they are not true houses, he said. To pass my brother's final test, you must make places where people will feel safe and welcome. Each of your houses must have a hearth where fires burn brightly, banishing the cold and bringing warmth to those inside. You must fill them with beds where weary travelers can rest their heads. And you must make rooms where family members can gather together and tell stories into the night. The humans hung their heads in shame. They realized that the coyote was right. Their shelters were not true homes, and they had much to learn about living in harmony with each other and the natural world. With renewed determination, they went back to work, determined to create places that welcomed all who entered. And so they did, building homes filled with light, warmth, and love. When the coyote returned, he was overjoyed with what he saw. My brother will be pleased with you now, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. You have learned how to live in peace and harmony, and your reward is a permanent home in this beautiful valley. With that, the coyote disappeared, leaving the humans alone in their newfound home. And so they lived there happily ever after, passing down the lessons they had learned from the coyote for generations to come. This is the end of the first chapter of Montezuma's Dream. Next time we'll talk about chapter 2, The Two Worlds. This is a plain bagel. This is chapter 2 of The Ones Who Walk Away from Amatlas, an original story that takes place in a world that is similar to, but also very different from our own history. And just a reminder, this is a completely made-up world. If you're listening to this because you think this is about real Native Americans, don't worry, it's not. Okay, let's get into it. Chapter 2, The Ones Who Walk in Silence, opens with more details about life in the first winter village where the story takes place. Now we know more about their daily lives. They wear snowshoes that are made from the wood of trees and rawhide thongs, like strips of leather. After a successful hunt, they must dry the meat carefully so it doesn't spoil in the frozen weather. If you leave meat out to freeze, it'll eventually get so hard that it won't spoil. But if you do this for too long, the meat will also become too hard to chew. So instead, they build shelters over fires to warm smoke, which gradually makes the meat dry enough to last through the winter. They also have to watch out for frostbite, which can make your toes and fingers fall off. That would be bad news, because they need all their toes and fingers to survive. And then there's the sky. Everyone in this society watches the sky all the time. There are no written stories, so they pass their history down orally. And one of the most important things they remember is the sky. Each clan has sky elders whose job it is to track what's happening up there. They memorize every detail of the sky and then tell everyone else what they've seen. When the sky elders speak, everyone else listens respectfully. In fact, they don't even interrupt them when they're talking because it is considered rude to distract someone who is speaking with their back turned to the people they're talking to. It's generally rude to interrupt anyone in any situation. You'd only do that if someone was teaching you something or telling you something important. But sky elders always have their backs turned to everyone when they're doing their thing, so nobody ever interrupts them. Now we learn about the first leg of the journey, which is loosely associated with the Big Dipper constellation. The first leg of the journey is called the first leg, because it's the first leg that the sky elders see each year after the Sundance, which happened at the end of the previous winter. Now, when we think of Native American cultures, we often think of elders being respected and listened to. But in this story, the leaders aren't necessarily the oldest members of their community. Sure, their age gives them some authority, but really they're more like the CEO of a corporation. Like you don't have to be the oldest person in a company to be the CEO, right? Usually it's the person with the most knowledge and experience. Similarly, here, their status as leader comes from being wise, not old or powerful. Because it's their job to keep their people alive, these people value intelligence much more than anything else. In fact, it's so important to be smart that even toddlers are expected to be spiritually dignified. Good luck with that. Anyway, the first leg of the journey is full of spirits. Spirits are everywhere, And especially during this leg, the thin veil between the physical world and the spirit world means that spirits can cross over. Some are good and some are bad, and the job of the Sky Elders is to protect their people from the bad ones. But since everyone respects the Sky Elders, there's never any fighting. Everyone works together to accomplish tasks, even though there are many different clans in the area. Sometimes the clans want to be left alone, but even then, they only ask for quiet time so they can listen to the spirits. They never fight about who should lead. It's always clear who has the most knowledge and experience. And it's also clear when a new person is ready to take over for an aging leader. For example, at one point, while their leader is away getting his teeth fixed, the next most knowledgeable person steps up to lead. This is probably for the best, because their leader ends up dying during surgery. That's how dangerous it is to get your teeth fixed here. When the leader dies, the second most knowledgeable person takes his place, and this happens peacefully because there's no fighting. Also, when the leader dies, he doesn't stay dead for long. He becomes a spirit guide for the clan and continues to offer advice, but now from beyond the grave. And because of this, the clan believes they will eventually be reunited with their leaders. So although death is scary, it's not permanent. We learn about a time when the clan was traveling and found a cave full of bones. At first, they were scared to go inside, but then they realized that the bones belonged to people from their own clan who had died a long time ago. The travelers built a fire and had a ceremony to honor the dead before continuing on their way. They knew that the spirits of their ancestors were with them, guiding and protecting them along their travels. But sometimes the spirits of strangers get angry, and if they're feeling particularly spiteful, they might throw rocks at people, or possess animals and attack them. So just to be safe, people carry bear spray to ward off hostile spirits. And then there's the silent time. This is a special period that happens once a year where people aren't allowed to talk. The spirit world is extra active during the silent time, and for some reason, speaking is forbidden. No one knows why, but no one dares ask. Not speaking isn't that hard, though most of the time they're just sitting around doing nothing, so it's easy to be silent. It's not like they're going to start chatting it up if they weren't already. As they travel, they start to find abandoned villages. Since the population has gotten smaller, some houses are empty and the people who live nearby move into them. The buildings themselves are small, just big enough for a family to huddle in and survive. They're also half buried in the ground, which helps keep the wind and snow out. Finally, they reach a place where the river freezes over and they can't continue walking along it anymore. They're forced to head south into the mountains, where it's harder to find food, but they have no choice. They need to reach warmer climates or they'll die from cold exposure. As they start picking up the pace, migration gains rhythm like walking inside a drumbeat. Now their entire way of life starts to fade away, replaced by this new one, which feels like it's been happening forever. They're losing their memories and becoming one with the drums. So that's the end of chapter 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked it, please consider liking the video. If you really liked it, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you love it, please subscribe. The music in this video is by an artist. Check out their work and support them. Thanks for watching. See you later. Chapter 3, Spirits in the Forest Shadows. Welcome, dear viewer, to our channel where the veil between the mundane and the mystical is at its thinnest. Today we delve into the heart of nature's embrace, where ancient trees stand as silent sentinels and secrets older than time itself are whispered on the wind. Join us as we uncover the truth behind these enigmatic whispers and unveil the existence of the elusive forest spirits that call these woods their home. Our journey begins in the heart of an ancient woodland where sunlight filters through the canopy in dappled patterns, painting the forest floor in a mosaic of light and shadow. It is here, amidst the moss-covered stones and gnarled tree roots, that we first hear the whispers. They seem to emanate from the very essence of the forest, carried on the rustling leaves and the babbling brooks. Are they friendly greetings or eerie warnings? And what is it about this place that gives rise to such supernatural whispers? As we venture deeper into the woods, the whispers grow louder, weaving tales of a realm unseen, a world where nature's beauty conceals a magic both enchanting and profound. We encounter weathered tree trunks adorned with strange symbols and formations that seem to defy the laws of nature. Could these be the marks left by the very spirits whose presence we sense all around us? The air grows heavy with anticipation as we stumble upon a clearing bathed in an ethereal glow. In its center stands a towering oak, its branches reaching towards the heavens like arms in supplication. As we draw closer, the whispers intensify, sharing stories of a time when these woods were alive with the energy of mystical beings. Who are these spirits? What purpose do they serve, and how can we hope to understand their ways? Our path leads us to a babbling brook, its waters crystal clear and brimming with life. Here, the whispers take on a playful tone, teasing us with glimpses of a world where nature's wonders know no bounds. The water's gentle melody seems to carry secrets that have been passed down through generations of forest dwellers. What secrets lie hidden beneath the surface, and how can we hope to unravel them? The sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the forest floor, as we come upon a grove of ancient trees. Their twisted branches form a labyrinthine maze, concealing secrets that have been whispered for centuries. As twilight descends, the whispers take on a haunting quality, sharing tales of love, loss, and the enduring power of nature. What mysteries lie at the heart of this shadowy grove, and how can we hope to comprehend their timeless allure? The night deepens, and with it the whispers transform into ethereal murmurs, guiding us towards a clearing bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. In its center, an ancient stone monolith stands as a silent sentinel, bearing witness to countless seasons and the whispers of countless souls. As we approach, the forest spirits reveal themselves, their presence both otherworldly and profoundly familiar. Among them we find the enigmatic dryad, her form intertwined with the ancient oak. Her eyes, pools of emerald wisdom, hold the secrets of ages past. The mischievous pixie darts among the wildflowers, his laughter echoing in the gentle breeze. The stoic gnome emerges from beneath a moss-covered stone, his presence grounding and steadfast. And the ethereal sylph dances gracefully among the trees, her movements as fluid and free as the wind itself. Each spirit is a testament to the boundless diversity of nature's magic, and together they weave a tapestry of wonder and intrigue that has enchanted the human heart for generations. But why do these spirits choose to dwell in the forest? What role do they play in the delicate balance of nature, and how can we hope to understand their intricate connection to the natural world? As the night progresses, the forest spirits share their wisdom, revealing the interconnectedness of all living things and the profound beauty that lies at the heart of the natural world. They speak of a time when humans and spirits lived in harmony, and they invite us to rediscover the forgotten language of nature that has been whispered on the winds since the dawn of time. But our time with the forest spirits is not without peril, for lurking in the shadows is the sinister boggart, a creature of darkness, that feeds on fear and despair. As the boggart approaches, the forest's tranquility is shattered, replaced by an oppressive sense of dread. The once playful spirits vanish into the undergrowth, leaving us to confront the boggart and the darkness it represents. With courage and determination, we face our fears, realizing that the boggart's power lies in our own darkness. As we embrace the light within us, the boggart loses its power and flees into the shadows from whence it came. In that moment, we understand that true strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in our ability to confront it with unwavering resolve. As dawn breaks, we awake to the realization that our journey through the whispering woods has been nothing short of a revelation. The secrets of the forest have been unveiled to us, and we carry the whispers of its spirits in our hearts. Now it is time to return to the world, forever changed by the magic we have witnessed. But before we go, the forest spirits gather once more, bidding us farewell with a final display of wonder and grace. The dryad, pixie, gnome, and sylph each impart a final message of wisdom, reminding us of the interconnectedness of all living things and the importance of preserving the natural world's magic. As we step back into the familiar world, the whispers of the forest follow us, serving as a constant reminder of the enchantment that lies just beyond the veil of our everyday reality. The spirits of the woods have touched our souls, and we carry their wisdom and their beauty with us, knowing that the magic of the forest will endure for generations to come. And so our journey comes to an end, or perhaps it is only just beginning. The forest spirits have revealed their presence to us, and we are forever changed by the experience. As we go forth into the world, may the whispers of the woods guide us, inspire us, and remind us of the boundless wonders that await those who dare to dream. Thank you, dear viewer, for joining us on this enchanting journey into the heart of the Whispering Woods. If you have enjoyed our tale of mystery and magic, we invite you to show your support. Your likes and comments fuel our creativity, allowing us to continue sharing captivating stories that transport you to realms where the boundaries of reality are blurred, and the magic of the natural world comes to life. If you have not yet subscribed, we urge you to join our growing community of adventurers and explorers. Together, we can uncover the secrets of the forest, the whispering trees, and the enigmatic spirits that dwell within. So click the subscribe button and become part of our wondrous community. And now, dear viewer, it is time to venture forth on your own journey. May the whispers of the woods guide you towards the magic that awaits in every corner of our enchanting world. Until next time, keep an open mind, a curious spirit, and a brave heart, for the realm of mystery and wonder is yours to explore. Alright, we're starting chapter 4 today, the Trail of Stones and Bones. So let's see what's going on out there. This is such an interesting section because this whole chapter is built around the idea of the journey itself being more important than the destination, and not just like any journey, but a journey across the most inhospitable terrain in all of North America, which is the Rocky Mountains. So it's Rocky Mountain terrain, it's fossil rich, there's bones everywhere, and it's heavy with spirits. But if you had to go anywhere, this would be the place to go because this is where the ancestors came from. This is where the spirits are. So here we have our 3 pilgrims on their way across the Rockies, and they re-following a trail. Now this is a sacred trail that was left long ago. We don't know who left it, but it's marked by stone cairns. Each cairn monolith is a memory offering, a prayer flag, a monument erected at a sacred place along the route. Many cultures have used cairns to mark trails or graves or sacred sites. In fact, many Native American tribes used them as part of their creation stories. They were often built of stones gathered from nearby, usually piled in distinctive shapes, sometimes spiraling upwards or leaning slightly. And now our pilgrims are following this ancient path, one cairn at a time, each cairn marking a story. As they move through these stories, we learn about the history of the region and the people who lived there before us. But it's not just history they're learning, they're also discovering something else, something about themselves. As they walk, they play childish games. Here's one of my favorites. Throw a pebble over your shoulder and don't look back until it lands. Then run as fast as you can to the next cairn without touching another rock. If you make it, your wish will come true. Of course, this is a game of chance, a gamble with fate, a childish attempt to influence the outcome of life by bending the future to the will of the random. What does it mean? Well, I think it means that our pilgrims are still kids at heart. They haven't lost their sense of wonder, their curiosity about the world around them. But it also means that they're desperate, that they'll try anything to improve their odds, even if it's just a childish game. Another thing they like to do is listen for echoes. Whoever calls first will get their wish. So they call out and wait to see who will answer. This is another one of those games that's rooted in tradition, something that people have been doing for centuries. It's a way to connect with the past, to feel the presence of those who came before us. But it's also a way to connect with each other. It's a way to bond over shared experiences, to create new memories. Okay, but here's the question I want you to ask yourself. Who left the first trail? Who was the first person to cross the Rockies? These are the kinds of questions that have kept me up at night. You know, I lie in bed at night trying to figure things out, and this is one of the things I think about. Who was the first person to cross the Rockies, and why did they leave the trail behind? Well, the author doesn't give us an answer, but he does give us a clue. He says that some rocks hum when you touch them, and that's how you know you're on the right path. So whoever left the trail, they knew something we don't know. They knew that certain rocks vibrate at certain frequencies, and when you touch them, they make music. Now, this could be a metaphor, of course. Maybe the music is in our heads. Maybe it's just the sound of the wind whistling through the rocks, or maybe it's real. Maybe there really is a hum that resonates within the earth. Either way, it's a powerful image that connects us to the spiritual aspect of the journey. Because what is a journey if not a search for something greater than ourselves? What is a pilgrimage if not a quest for meaning? Our pilgrims are searching for something, and the music they hear is the answer. It's the sound of the universe itself, calling out to them, guiding them on their path. Alright, let's keep going. Here's another great line. Sometimes the trail was lost for days, weeks, months at a time. Then a single cairn would appear on the horizon, beckoning, summoning them forward into the mystery, into the unknown. When they finally found it, they would follow it eagerly, for it meant that they were getting closer to their destination. The trail led them onward, deeper into the heart of the mountains. I love this part because it shows us that the journey is never easy. There are times when our pilgrims lose the trail. There are times when they doubt themselves, but they always find their way back to it. They always find their way back to the path that leads them closer to their goal. This is a powerful metaphor for life. Life is full of twists and turns. There are times when we get lost. There are times when we doubt ourselves. But as long as we keep moving, as long as we keep searching, we will find our way back to the path that leads us to where we need to be. The author tells us that there are no maps, no guideposts, no markers along the trail. Instead, they have to rely on their dreams, on the stars, and on the memories of their elders. And that's how they navigate the Rockies. the greatest mountain range in North America. How does this happen? How do they cross one of the most inhospitable terrain on the planet? How do they survive the elements, the cold, the hunger, the loneliness? How do they stay on the trail? Well, they do it because they have to. They don't have a choice. There is no other path for them to follow. They must walk this path because it is the only one that leads them home. And home is where the ancestors came from. Home is where the spirits are. Home is where they belong. They walk this path because it is the path of their destiny. And as they walk, they discover who they are. They discover their strength, their courage, their resilience. They discover the power of their connection to the past, to the land, to each other. They discover that they are not alone. They are part of a great chain of beings who have walked this path before them. They are part of a great story that has been unfolding for centuries. They are part of a great mystery that has been hidden from us for so long. Alright, we've got 2 more sections after this one. Next up is Chapter 5, The Sundance. So if you want to get ahead of the book club, you know where to go. And don't forget, we've got a podcast now. You can listen to us talk about this book and other books and stories and all kinds of cool stuff. Just search for us in your favorite podcast app. Until next time, thanks for listening. Chapter 5, A Night the Stars Changed Color. Maybe someone is living their best life on one of them right now, sipping blue milk while they ride a giant space slug. There are over 200 billion Earth-like planets out there in the Milky Way. Maybe someone else is getting their heart broken by an alien with 3 eyes and 4 arms. Maybe someone is staring at the night sky and wondering if there are other planets out there just like theirs, filled with life and light and love. Or maybe that someone is looking up at the sky and screaming in terror because tonight the stars changed color. And while it may not be easy to escape the pull of a black hole or the gravitational forces of a crashing asteroid, according to NASA, one of the most dangerous things your planet could face is a sudden change in the color of its stars. And no, I'm not talking about when the sun turns into a red giant and engulfs the inner planets. I'm talking about a different kind of cosmic catastrophe. Something that happened to our ancestors so long ago, that all we have of it now is myth and folklore. Something that might happen again tonight. It was a night just like any other. The people went about their daily business. They hunted and gathered. They traded and gossiped and made love under the indifferent gaze of a million cold stars. It wasn't until after dark that things took a turn. People were settling down for the night, children nestled against their mothers, listening to stories and drinking warm goat's milk. That's when the adults started to notice the strange lights in the sky. At first it was just a few stars that seemed to have gone out, replaced by pinpricks of brilliant red light. Most people didn't even notice. They had seen a shooting star or 2 in their lives and assumed this was the same. But then more and more stars began to fade and turn a sickly yellow. It was as though someone was snuffing out the candles on a birthday cake, plunging the world into darkness and despair. The few brave souls who looked away from the ground saw that entire constellations had turned a deep shade of red, like blood. The people cried out to their gods for mercy. Some fell to their knees and prayed that the darkness would pass. Others wrung their hands and wailed and beat their chests. There were prophets among them, of course, those who claimed to hear the whispers of the gods or see visions in the smoke of their sacred fires. These were the ones who proclaimed that the end of days had come. The stars themselves were dying and soon the earth would follow. But even the bravest of the brave, the fiercest of the fierce, couldn't help but feel a chill crawl up their spines and squeeze their hearts. This was no ordinary night. Their very survival could depend on what happened next. And the only thing they knew for certain was that it had never happened before. In times of crisis, strong leaders will always emerge. Some will rally their people together, giving orders, making plans, trying to take control of the situation. Others will step back and let fate take its course. Our ancestors were no different. There were many kinds of leaders, men and women, young and old. But one thing they had in common was that none of them were warriors. No general or conqueror would have been able to inspire confidence that night. There was nothing anyone could do to fight whatever was happening to the stars. So instead, the people looked to their shamans, their priests and priestesses, those who had devoted their lives to understanding the ways of the divine. Some of these people wore animal skins and bone jewelry, others had shaved heads and painted faces. Some spoke in tongues, others sang. But no matter how different they were from each other, they all seemed to agree on one thing. They didn't know what to do. This was uncharted territory, something that had never happened before. It was impossible to know what the right course of action would be. So the people waited. They waited for an answer, a sign, a miracle. And in the end, it was the silence of the stars that answered them. The darkness was absolute. The cold was unbearable. And as the hours passed and the minutes stretched into an eternity, the people began to panic. As the night wore on, the people split into two groups. One wanted to stay put. They would build a great fire and sacrifice precious livestock to the angry gods. Surely that would be enough to appease them. The other group wanted to keep moving. They would abandon their homes and possessions and flee into the wilderness. Perhaps they would be safer there, away from the dying stars. A young woman stood between the two groups. She was neither a leader nor a warrior, but the people had elected her as their spokeswoman. She was the one who would speak for them and bargain with the gods. She had no special powers, no knowledge of the divine, but she did have one thing that the ancient people valued above all else: courage. She stepped forward and raised her hands to the silent heavens. "Great gods," she cried, "why have you forsaken us? Why have you plunged the world into darkness? We are but humble mortals. We do not know what to do. Please show us the way." As she spoke, the people behind her grew restless. They shifted from foot to foot, muttering to themselves, pleading for mercy. Then something incredible happened. The stars began to shine again. At first it was just a faint glimmer, but it grew brighter and brighter until the sky blazed with 1,000 different colors. The people gasped and fell to their knees in awe. They had been so sure that the world was ending, that their time had come, that they hadn't noticed the small miracle that was happening right in front of them. The young woman continued to stare up at the sky, entranced. The stars were changing colors again, and this time they weren't dying. They were coming back to life. Red turned to orange, which turned to yellow, then green and blue. The colors swirled and shifted, creating a kaleidoscope of light and color that the people had never seen before. It was beautiful, yes, but there was something else in the way the stars moved, something that set the young woman's teeth on edge. It was almost as if the stars were laughing at them. And if you think that's crazy, wait till I tell you what happens next. Okay, so the stars stopped laughing and did something even weirder. They started singing. Well, really, it was more like chanting, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate in the bones of the people. It was a sound that had no beginning and no end. It was a sound that had always been there and would always be there. It was the sound of creation, the sound of the universe itself. And the young woman understood. She understood that the stars weren't angry, they were lonely. They had been watching the people for a long time, and they wanted to talk to them. She also understood that the reason they had chosen her was because she had listened to them when no one else had. She had paid attention to the tiny details, the things that most people missed. She had seen the shooting stars and wondered if there were other worlds out there just like theirs, and now the stars were giving her a chance to find out. They were offering her a gift, a chance to travel to other worlds and meet other people. All she had to do was figure out how. Now, obviously, our ancestors didn't have spaceships or the technology to explore the universe, but that didn't mean they didn't try. There are cave paintings and petroglyphs all over the world that depict strange beings with large heads and huge eyes. Are they gods? Are they demons? Are they aliens? Who knows? What we do know is that our ancestors were trying to communicate with them. They left messages in the sky for whoever would listen, and sometimes it seems like their prayers were answered. There are stories from all over the world about mysterious lights in the sky and strange beings who came down from the stars and spoke to humans. Sometimes the stories are scary, like the legend of the Starman, who came to Earth to steal children, or the story of the cattle mutilation incident in which an alien probe landed in a farmer's field and drained his cows of blood. Other times the stories are hopeful, like the tale of the star people who brought a message of peace and love from the gods. Or the story of the UFO encounter in which a friendly alien offered a young girl a ride on his spaceship. What do you think? Do you believe these stories? Let me know in the comments below. So the people split into two groups, those who wanted to stay behind and those who wanted to move on. Those who stayed behind built a great altar and sacrificed their most precious possessions to the gods. They sang and danced and begged for forgiveness. And those who moved on wandered into the wilderness, following the stars for guidance. But no matter which group the people belonged to, they all carried one thing with them, a small rock monolith that the shaman had blessed. It was a reminder of the night the stars changed color, a symbol of the day the world almost ended, and they would need that rock monolith. They would need it to survive in a world that had been forever changed. And hey, if you liked this episode, check out the rest of the series. We've got 39 more chapters to go. Just make sure you subscribe so you don't miss chapter 6, The Day the Animals Spoke. Also, apparently, even spirits don't like being ignored. There's this river that talked to me one time. It wasn't just any river though, it was a big one. I mean, real big. When we came to it, there was nowhere else to go, so we had to cross it. And what I remember most was how wide it was and how the sound of the water rushing over the rocks just echoed forever. It felt like standing inside a canyon made of sound. It could have been the Missouri or the Yellowstone. They were always talking about crossing some great river. I never asked them why they wanted to cross it. But once we got close enough, I heard the current talking. There were voices in the rushing sound. They told us to come into the water and gave us instructions on how to get to the other side. At first, it didn't make any sense. It was just noise. But then it started to form words. They told us to take off our moccasins and leave them on the bank as a gift for the river. To show respect, they said we should give it something that makes a lot of noise when we hit the rocks, like a tin can or some bells. Then we'd have to chant while we walked in the water. It was going to be a ceremony. They didn't say much more after that. And soon we were at the river's edge. It was so wide it felt like an ocean. The current pulled at my feet. I took off my moccasins and laid them by the bank, then dropped in a handful of pebbles. I knew the river wouldn't eat them up, that it would keep them safe. My brother was next. He dropped his pebbles in and took off his moccasins. He had this red bandana he always wore around his head. He took it off, tied it into a big knot and threw it in the water. Then he turned and looked at me, and I could tell, even though he didn't say anything, he was scared. We all waded into the water, holding hands, chanting the song the river had taught us. My sister had her flute, and whenever she played it, the notes seemed to wrap around things and squeeze them tight. Her music filled the air with sadness. We were giving away our names to the river. That was what the ceremony was about. But there was something else, too. Something no one was saying out loud. We all knew someone was getting left behind, and it might as well have been me. A kid can get swept away easily, especially one that small. I reached back and grabbed the little ones by the hand. They couldn't know how dangerous this was, so I made up a game. The river wants to play a trick on us, the biggest trick of all. It wants to take one of our babies. We have to stop it. Okay, you two are the bravest warriors I ever seen. The water sloshed around my knees and the current tugged at my shirt. You gotta protect your sister. Got it. Good. We moved forward slowly, almost in a line. Everyone held on to the person in front of them, and the ones in the middle had to work extra hard not to let go. I could feel the fear in everyone's grip. When we were chest deep, I looked back and saw my brother struggling. He was yelling for help and the others were pulling him along, but he was going under. This is it, I thought. This is where we lose one of ours. And just then, the river grabbed him and pulled him under. I screamed and reached for him, but it was too late. The water had swallowed him whole, and as he went down, I saw his eyes pop open and he looked right at me and smiled. Then he was gone. I don't know how long we stayed in that river. It felt like hours, but maybe it was only minutes. When we finally got to shore, everything was quiet. Even the birds had stopped singing. I looked back at the river and wondered if it would swallow another one of us. A little ways up the bank, I found my brother's moccasins. I reached down and picked them up. They were filled with water and pebbles. He hadn't dropped those in the river. Someone must have brought them there. As we moved on, I kept thinking about the river and how it had taken my brother, but then brought him back. He was older now and somehow wiser. I do want to know if it was the water that changed him or the spirits that lived inside it. I was just a kid myself, so I didn't understand everything that happened to him. But when I got older and had kids of my own, I realized what the river had done. It had taken my brother from us and given us a teacher. I'm pretty sure that was the last time they crossed that river. But sometimes at night, when the wind blows through the cottonwoods, I hear the river talking still. It tells stories of people who have lost their names and the ones who have found them again. It tells of brave warriors and the children they protect. Sometimes I hear my brother's name being called and I wonder if he can hear it too. I'm pretty sure he knows when the river is calling him, because sometimes he'll take off running and jump in a car without asking where we're going or why. I just sit there and watch him go. Sometimes I dream about the river. In my dreams, it's always changing. Sometimes it's wider than the valley and sometimes it disappears altogether, leaving only dry land and pebbles. Those are the nights I miss my brother the most. He's been gone so long, most of the family doesn't remember him, but in my dreams, we're all kids again and the river keeps us safe as we cross. I don't know how old I was when it happened, but it must have been a very long time ago. Back before there was a road, there was nothing out there but wild horses and Indians. Well, not really Indians. They called themselves the Apaches, and I guess that's what everyone else called them too. That's what my grandfather told me. Anyway, he said they'd always avoided the river, but the drought had lasted too long and they had to cross. He said the river was angry, that it knew they needed water, but it didn't want to give it up easily. That's when they gave the river a name. They named it after one of their bravest warriors, a man who'd fought against the Mexicans and the soldiers who tried to kill him, and that's how they crossed the river that day. They called out the warrior's name until the water calmed down. I wish I remembered more of the stories he told me, but I was just a kid. I didn't know any better. All I know is that the river took my brother, then gave him back to us, older and wiser. I think about that a lot, the way the river took him and gave him back. I used to think the river was magical, but now I'm older and I know there's no such thing as magic. Still, I believe the river saved my brother. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the truth. And the reason I am telling you this is because I believe there is a lesson in here somewhere. Maybe the river wants to teach us something about ourselves. When you look at a map, you can see it has a path, a beginning and an end, but really, it's more like a story. It has a beginning, middle and end. Just like this one. In the beginning, there was just water flowing downhill. It was just a part of the landscape, nothing special. But then the Apaches came along and they needed to cross. They gave the river a name and made it a part of their story. That's when it became special. That's how stories work. They need a beginning, middle, and end. Without those three parts, there's no story. When we were kids, the river took my brother from us. That was the middle part of the story. It changed everything. The three of us became four. And when it gave him back to us, it was different, it changed again. So the river had a beginning, a middle, and an end. The end comes when the water gives my brother back to us, older and wiser. And we carry that knowledge with us the rest of our lives. If you ever look at a river on a map, remember it's more than just water flowing downhill. It's a story. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And every bend in the river is a secret the water's keeping. And if you listen closely, maybe you can hear it. One summer, a long time ago, the government sent some men out to find the Apaches. They wanted to move them onto a reservation. These men were looking for a fight. They had guns, and they weren't afraid to use them. The Apaches had already been pushed west for many years, and they knew the cavalry was coming. That's why they decided to cross the river. They'd heard it was full of catfish and buffalo, and that's exactly what they needed. For 3 days, they fished and hunted along the river banks and filled their bellies with food. They were ready to keep moving on the 4th day, but the men refused. They said they couldn't leave until they'd seen the river's source. I told them that was impossible, but they insisted. So we set out to find the river's beginning. We walked for many hours, following trails made by deer and elk. Then we came to a clearing, and there it was, a spring bubbling out of the ground, a small pool of water surrounded by rocks and trees. My brother jumped in without hesitation, but the men stood by the bank, unsure of what to do. What now? One of them asked, his voice echoing in the silence. Now, I said. We wait. We waited until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. As darkness fell, the men gathered around the fire we'd built. They were silent, each lost in his own thoughts. Suddenly, one of them jumped up, his face pale in the firelight. "We have to get out of here," he whispered, his voice trembling. "This place isn't right." He ran to the riverbank and splashed water on his face. "Let's go," he urged, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't want to stay here another minute." We followed him back the way we'd come, the silence broken only by the crackling fire and the buzzing of insects. We walked for what seemed like hours, but it was probably only minutes. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the fear lifted. The men relaxed their shoulders and slowed their pace. "We're safe now," one of them said, his voice shaky. "We're safe from the river." I nodded, knowing they were right, but I couldn't help but wonder what had frightened them so much. What was it about this river that inspired such terror? As we walked, the men began to laugh, their voices echoing in the darkness. They joked and told stories, and for a moment I forgot about the river and its secrets. But as we reached the edge of the forest and the river came into view, I knew that whatever it was, it would be waiting for us. Standing on the bank, looking at the river, I knew we weren't alone. Something powerful watched us from the depths. But now that we were back, it was our turn to decide what to do next. Would we keep walking away from the river, or would we turn back and face whatever was hiding in its waters? The men argued about what to do next. Some wanted to keep moving away from the river, but others insisted we should go back and finish what we'd started. They were eager to uncover the river's secrets, and they were unafraid to do whatever it took. "We've come too far to turn back now," one of them said, his voice strong and steady. "We have to know what's at the heart of this river." His words echoed the determination that burned in their eyes. They wouldn't let the river defeat them, not without a fight. With renewed determination, we turned toward the river. The current seemed stronger now, pulling us deeper into its embrace. The water was dark and murky, making it hard to see what lay beneath the surface. As we waded in, the temperature dropped and a chill wind swept across the river, sending goosebumps prickling across my skin. The men gripped their weapons tightly, their faces grim in the dim light. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as if the river itself was testing our resolve, trying to push us back to shore. But we pressed on, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a desire to conquer the unknown. Finally, we reached the spot where the river seemed to be calling to us, where the water was still and silent. It was as if the river had been holding its breath, waiting for us to arrive. But now that we were here, what would we find? What secrets would the river reveal? As the men stood on the bank, arguing about what to do next, I slipped into the water. The current was strong, pulling me further from shore, but I didn't care. I was drawn to the center of the river, to the place where the water was still and silent. The men's voices faded as I focused on the sound of the rushing water. I closed my eyes and let the current carry me away. Suddenly, the water shifted and a shape emerged from the depths. It was a woman, her body adorned with fish and feathers. She reached out to me, her eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "Welcome," she whispered, her voice echoing with the power of the river. "I am the keeper of this stream. Why have you come to my home?" Her words startled me, but I knew I had to be brave. "We seek knowledge," I replied, my voice echoing in the stillness. "We want to understand the secrets of this river." She nodded slowly, her gaze intense. "Very well," she said. "I will show you what you seek, but the path is perilous and only the pure of heart can follow." Before I could respond, she dove into the water and vanished. The current around me seemed to swirl and pull, urging me forward. With a deep breath, I let the river carry me deeper into its embrace. The water grew colder, and I could feel the weight of the river's power pressing down on me. But I pushed on, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a desire to unravel the mysteries that lay ahead. The river was testing me, pushing me to my limits, but I wouldn't give up, not yet. I had come too far to turn back now. What I discovered in the heart of the river changed me forever. The secrets I uncovered there became a part of me, shaping my understanding of the world and my place in it. The river had shown me the truth, and I knew that once I returned to the bank, everything would be different. As I emerged from the water, the men rushed to my side, their faces etched with concern. "What did you find?" one of them asked, his voice filled with urgency. I looked at him, my eyes shining with the newfound knowledge I'd gained. "We found the heart of the river," I said, my voice echoing with the power of the water. "And it showed me the truth." The men stared at me, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension. They had come seeking answers, but perhaps they weren't ready for what they had found. The truth can be a dangerous thing, and sometimes it's best left undiscovered. As we stood there on the bank, the river flowed on, carrying with it the secrets of the ages. I knew that some things are best left unknown, that some truths are too powerful to comprehend. But I also knew that the river had chosen me to bear its wisdom, to carry its message to those who were ready to listen. With a heavy heart and a clear mind, I turned away from the river and walked back into the forest, the echo of the water's wisdom ringing in my ears. I knew that the river had changed me forever, and I knew that I would never be the same again. This is Chapter 7, Painted Cliffs and Marked Rocks, of our ongoing journey through the pages of Big Bend National Park's prehistoric past. Join us as we explore the history behind the park's most iconic images. We left off last time in the heart of the Chizos Mountains, after having a brief glimpse into the lives of the indigenous people who lived there. Now we are going to set out across the desert in search of the artifacts left behind by those very same people. And nowhere is this done better than right here along the high desert cliffs of the Chizos. As we round the bend and open ourselves up to the vast expanse of the desert, we are greeted with an unbelievable sight, thousands of years of history all around us in the form of petroglyphs. These markings are made by earlier civilizations and include spirals, hunters, strange creatures, and other symbols that tell the story of a way of life long gone. This is such an important part of the history of this area, and the best place to see it for yourself. The best place to start exploring the ancient markings is right here at the top of the hill. Here we can see several large petroglyphs carved into the rock face. The first shows a spiral with what appears to be 3 humans coming out of it. Behind them are 2 deer and another human. In their hands they hold bows and arrows. Next to the spiral is a handprint and a series of lines branching out like veins. A short distance away is a highly stylized human figure with what appears to be a bow slung over his shoulder. He has a single line for a head and another extending out the back, which may indicate a tail or perhaps a loincloth. Just below him is a small but detailed deer. There are many questions surrounding these markings, such as who created them and why. But probably the biggest debate among historians is whether or not they are warnings. You see, when the Jornada Mogollon culture was alive, they were living on the edge of the Chihuahuan Desert. They knew how unforgiving the land could be, and they respected Mother Earth and her power. To them, the land was full of signs and omens, both good and bad. Could these carvings be warnings to future travelers about the dangers ahead? The next question is, if these are warnings, then who exactly are they warning? Is it possible that they are meant to warn off outsiders, or are they trying to prevent members of their own culture from entering this sacred space? It is hard to say for sure, because there are so many theories and no concrete evidence to back any of them up. A few miles down the road, there is another panel of petroglyphs. This one is smaller but equally mysterious. There are several human figures, some running and some standing still. One of the humans has their arms raised above their head like they are dancing. Another appears to have a bundle in their hands, possibly a staff. There are also several geometric shapes and what looks like a bird. This particular set of drawings has a lot of movement to it and seems more lively than the previous set. Our final stop on this leg of our journey takes us to the base of these cliffs, where there are hundreds of petroglyphs covering every inch of rock that they could find. As we make our way through the different panels of artwork, we notice some interesting details. For example, the people are always depicted with very thin bodies and large heads. Their eyes are large and almond-shaped, and they seem to be looking off into the distance. Some are shown holding what appears to be staffs or spears, while others have their hands resting on their hips. There are also many geometric designs and zoomorphic figures, such as lizards, snakes, and birds. While it is impossible to know for sure what all of these drawings represent, scholars believe that they may depict the Jornada Mogollon people and their daily activities. The thin, tall figures may represent the tribe's shamans or spiritual leaders, while the geometric designs could represent clan symbols or other aspects of their culture. The animals may have been important to them, either as sources of food or as spiritual beings. Overall, the petroglyphs provide a fascinating glimpse into the beliefs and way of life of the indigenous people who lived in the area. Now that we have seen some of the larger petroglyphs, it is time to look at some of the smaller ones. We will be doing this by hiking down into the canyon below. As we make our way down, we notice something interesting. Every few steps, there is a small indentation in the rock. At first we think it is just a natural feature, but then we realize that they are actually small, shallow depressions carved into the rock. When we ask the ranger about them, she tells us that they are called cupules and are thought to be used in a ritual known as rock art activation. According to tradition, the elders would lick their finger and then touch the cupule. This would awaken the spirit of the rock and allow them to communicate with the ancestors. Of course, we do not know this for sure, since there are no written records of this practice. However, the ranger tells us that this is the best guess of historians, based on the evidence they have available. She also tells us that there is a similar practice carried out on the rock art found in this area. After carefully cleaning the rock surface, the person performing the ritual would then rub their body parts against the glyph, transferring their essence to the rock. Again, this is not something we know for sure, but it is the best guess of historians based on the evidence they have available. After making our way down into the canyon, we begin to see more cupules. There are hundreds of them spread out over several acres. We also see some petroglyphs and pictos, which are painted designs. We stop to admire a panel of petroglyphs that includes a spiral, a human figure, and what appears to be a deer. The spiral is carved very deeply into the rock, and the human figure has a distinctive triangular-shaped head. As we continue our hike, we notice that the cupules become more numerous and deeper as we descend into the canyon. We also start to see more pictographs, including some colorful handprints. We come across a rock shelter that contains some very interesting artwork. On the ceiling, there are several human figures that appear to be dancing. Below the figures are some geometric designs and what looks like a staff. It is amazing to think that this artwork is thousands of years old, and that it has survived all this time. It really makes us feel connected to the people who came before us. As we continue our hike, we start to see more and more rock art, each piece more unique and interesting than the last. We come across a panel that depicts a bird with outstretched wings. The bird is shown in great detail, including its feathers and tail. There are also some geometric designs and what looks like a human figure. As we make our way back up the canyon, we come across a rock monolith that has been marked with cupules all over it. There are dozens of them, and it is hard to imagine how long it took to carve them all. We stop and admire a panel of petroglyphs that shows a deer with a human figure and what appears to be a staff. The deer is shown in great detail, including its antlers and spots. The human figure has a distinctive triangular-shaped head. As we continue our hike, we start to see less and less rock art, but the quality does not diminish. We come across a rock shelter that contains some of the most detailed petroglyphs we have seen yet. There are several human figures, some shown in profile and others shown from behind. Some are holding what appears to be staffs, while others have their hands resting on their hips. There are also some geometric designs and what looks like a bird. As we reach the end of our hike, we come across a final panel of petroglyphs. It includes a human figure, what appears to be a bird, and some geometric designs. The human figure is shown in great detail, including its eyes and hands. The bird is shown with outstretched wings, and the geometric designs are intricate and mysterious. Overall, our hike has been a humbling experience. We have seen thousands of years of history firsthand, and we have learned about the rich cultural heritage of the indigenous people who once lived here. As we make our way back to the car, we can't help but feel a sense of wonder and awe at the beauty and mystery of this place. And so our journey through Chapter 7, Painted Cliffs and Marked Rocks, comes to an end. We hope that you have enjoyed learning about the fascinating history of Big Bend National Park and the indigenous people who lived there. Remember, if you want to learn more about the history of this area, you can visit the park's website or visitor center. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and one last thing, according to one of the elders we met on our hike, one of the lizard drawings winked at him, so keep an eye out for that if you go back and look hard enough. You may just see it too. Chapter 8, The Woman Who Dreamed the Path. You wake to the sound of someone humming. Not a song, you know. Not quite a lullaby either. It floats just above the ground, like smoke without a fire. You sit up slowly, blanket of dust still clinging to your shoulders. The camp is quiet, too quiet, maybe. A few figures still sleep. Others stir quietly near the fire. No one is speaking loudly. No one wants to wake her. She's sitting by herself at the edge of the ridge, knees drawn in, eyes closed, face tilted toward the rising sun like a sunflower that somehow wandered into the desert. Her name isn't spoken much during the day out of respect, out of awe, out of something else no one really names. But you've heard her called by many things. Dreamwalker, the woman who sleeps with the mountains. She doesn't speak unless she has to. But when she does, everyone listens like the wind just got serious. The elders say she's been dreaming things since before she had teeth. Back then, it was small stuff, seeing where the deer would graze, or what patch of berries would ripen first. But lately, the dreams have gotten big, bigger than one person should carry. She started speaking of heat, of mountains, of red ground, of a place where the wind comes warm, not sharp, where the stones are sunlit and the sky doesn't bite. She said, "We're being called." And just like that, the migration began to shift. At first, people were cautious. A woman leading, unusual, sure, but not forbidden. In Apache tradition, women could hold power. Real power, medicine, story, memory. The kind that didn't wear feathers or shout, but still filled the air like cedar smoke. She had that quiet kind of gravity. Still, not everyone was on board. You remember the arguments. Around the fire, behind the tents. Half whispers with sharp edges. We follow rivers, not dreams. No one's seen this red ground she talks about. It's too far, too hot, too southern. But she never defended herself. She just kept dreaming quietly, patiently, and the dreams got louder. Even if she didn't, one night she saw a line of stars bending over the horizon like a road drawn across the sky. In the dream, they moved, and she moved with them. Waking up, she said, "It's time." And despite the doubters, people started packing again. You remember the walk, not much talking, just long days, dry days, but also days with strange signs. Birds flying in formation, always ahead. Stones that looked like arrows, a single tree with red leaves in the middle of nowhere. Nothing huge, but enough to make you wonder. There was that one afternoon you were all walking through a canyon, narrow and golden with light, when she stopped. Just stopped. Turned her head like she was listening to something no one else could hear. Then she smiled. Not big, just enough. And said, "We're close." You looked around and saw nothing but dust and rock. Not exactly paradise. But then, over the next few days, the land began to shift. The wind felt different, smelled like sage and something sweet underneath. Nights weren't as cold. Mornings felt like a blessing instead of a punishment. Some still grumbled. Coincidence, we were heading this way anyway. A real guide would carry a map. You even heard someone joke. She probably dreamed herself into a sunburn, but those voices got quieter because her dreams kept proving true. She spoke of a mountain tall, round-shouldered, with a white peak and a shadow like a bear. a place of rest, a place of power. No one knew what she meant, until you saw it. Far in the distance, exactly as she said, and when the group reached it, there was water. Clean, cold, flowing from the stone like a gift. Everyone drank, everyone stared. And that night, no one doubted her. People began asking her to dream for them, just small things at first. Will the hunt go well? Will my child get better? Will it rain next week? She answered only when she had a dream. Never guessed, never pretended. One evening a woman asked if her brother lost months ago was still alive. The dreamwalker shook her head gently. He walks the other trail now, she said. No drama, no sadness, just truth, like wind through grass. The woman cried, but also nodded. It felt like closure, somehow. She wasn't always serious, though that's the funny part. Sometimes she'd laugh softly, like someone who didn't want to disturb the stars. Once, a young boy asked her if she dreamed of flying. She said, yes, but only when I eat too many cactus fruits before bed. People began leaving little offerings near her blanket, bits of turquoise, a feather, a small carved figure, nothing flashy, just tokens of trust, of belief. And every morning she'd return them to the land, quietly, gratefully. She didn't want a shrine, she just wanted sleep. Historians know those modern book-loving time travelers, they still argue about her. Was she one person, a myth, a composite of many wise women through time? They'll never agree, because her story wasn't written, it was whispered, passed through breath, not ink, and breath disappears. But here's the thing, whether she was one person or many, her dream became a compass, not just for that generation, but the ones that followed. Because even now, deep in Apache stories, there's always a woman who dreams, and her dreams still point south. You sit beside your own fire now, the wind cooling your cheeks. You look up at the sky. No dreams yet. But maybe you don't need one. Maybe the dream already walked ahead of you, and you're just following the footprints. The stars above you form a crooked line, just like she once described. You smile, you hum her song, soft and strange. And for the first time in a long while, the land feels like it's listening back. It's me. This is chapter 9, Storms and Starvation of my actual life story. Welcome to my channel. This chapter starts out pretty harsh. We had 3 days of cold returns. That means that it snowed all day and then it melted all day and then froze overnight. So we had to start over again. It was very depressing. The temperature got down to -30, and our food was getting very low. Our hope was getting lower. We were hungry, we were tired, and our cat Mittens was looking very thin. Then some stuff happened inside the tent that I'm not really proud of. Blame started flying. People started accusing each other of doing things wrong. People started crying. And at one point I thought this might end up being a very short expedition, because people were just not getting along. Now, I do want to get into details about what happened inside the tent, because I feel like it would be unfair to the people involved. But I will say this, when things like that happen inside a tent, it fractures the trust, and it really makes it hard to move forward. It doesn't matter how long you've been traveling together or how well you know those people. Sometimes there are just problems that come up, and sometimes people handle them in different ways, and it can create a big rift between people. For me personally, I started to feel like the weight of the world was on my shoulders, because I could see how upset everyone was, and I felt like I had to fix it, but I didn't know how. So I just kind of sat there feeling overwhelmed and helpless. But luckily, later that night, we had a very special ceremony inside the tent. Now I'm not going to tell you what happened during this ceremony. I'm not gonna describe it in detail. I am just tell you that it took place in total silence and it somehow fixed everything. It brought everyone together again. We were friends again. We were working together again. We were laughing together again. I think ceremonies like this are really important, especially when you're spending a lot of time with other people. Sometimes you just need to take a moment to step outside of yourself and think about others and connect with them on a deeper level. And for us, that's what we needed. We needed to have a ceremony where we could all come together and really try to understand each other's perspectives and feelings. And after that, everything was better. We were able to move forward together and continue our journey. The next morning after our ceremony, I woke up and I felt so much better. I felt like I was ready to face whatever challenges came my way. And as I looked out into the white expanse, I saw a deer. It was standing there looking at us. And I couldn't help but feel like it was a sign of hope and resilience. I knew that no matter what challenges we faced, we would get through it together. Just like the deer, we were strong and adaptable, and we would find a way to thrive in this wilderness. And throughout the day, whenever we stopped to rest, I saw deer tracks in the snow. There must have been dozens of deer around us. and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were trying to tell us something, like they were trying to communicate with us on some level. Later that night, I had a dream about a hawk. In my dream, a hawk swooped down from the sky and landed on my backpack, and as it perched there, I could feel its powerful presence and sharp gaze, and I knew that it was there to protect us. I felt a sense of safety and strength knowing that the hawk was by my side, and I realized that sometimes we just need to trust that we are being watched over and guided by something bigger than ourselves. And in another dream, a coyote appeared. The coyote was cunning and clever, and I knew that it was there to teach us something about survival. I felt a sense of excitement and curiosity, and I wanted to learn everything I could from this wise creature. And I realized that sometimes we just need to be open to learning from the animals around us and embracing the unknown. So then I woke up and someone was already sitting outside the tent. And I asked them, "What did the coyote tell you?" And they said, "He told me a joke," and I laughed. I couldn't help myself. I mean, here I was thinking that the coyote had some profound message for me, and it was just there to tell me a joke, and I felt a sense of relief and lightness. Sometimes we take ourselves too seriously and we forget to just relax and enjoy the moment. And the coyote was just there to remind me of that. And as I looked around, I realized that the coyote was everywhere. I saw its tracks in the snow. I heard its bark in the wind, and I felt its presence all around me. And I knew that it was there to guide us and protect us. And I felt a sense of gratitude and humility knowing that we were just visitors in its home. After our little chat with the coyote, we packed up and continued our journey. The weather was still cold and we were still hungry, but we were determined to keep moving forward. We didn't know what lay ahead, but we were ready to face whatever challenges came our way. We traveled for many days, and the cold and hunger never went away. It was always there with us, a constant reminder of the harsh reality of our situation, but we didn't let it get to us. We had our ceremony, we had our animal guides, and we had each other, and that was all that mattered. One evening we decided to make camp early. We were exhausted from days of walking and we needed a break. As we set up our tents, we could feel the wind howling around us. It was going to be a storm. And as we huddled inside our tent, listening to the wind and rain, we knew that we were safe. We were together, and that was all that mattered. And then something amazing happened. It started snowing. Big fluffy snowflakes were falling from the sky and covering everything in a blanket of white. It was beautiful. And as we watched the snow fall, we couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and awe. We knew that this was something special. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And we were so grateful to be a part of it. As the night wore on, the snow continued to fall, and we continued to watch in amazement. And then suddenly, we heard a knock on the tent. We were all scared because we didn't know what was out there in the dark, but we knew that we had to be brave. And as we slowly opened the tent flap, we saw the most amazing thing. There was a coyote standing there, and it was smiling, and we couldn't help but smile back. We knew that the coyote was there to guide us and protect us, and we felt a sense of gratitude and humility knowing that we were in the presence of such a wise and powerful creature. And then the coyote did something that we never expected. It started dancing. It was dancing in the snow, and it was beautiful, and we couldn't help but join in. We all started dancing in the snow, and we danced and danced until we were exhausted, and then the coyote disappeared. And as we watched it go, we knew that it was time for us to move on. We had learned so much from the coyote, and we were grateful for its guidance and protection. And as we packed up our gear, we knew that we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. We were stronger now because of the coyote, and we knew that we could rely on each other and ourselves. And that was all that mattered. And that's the end of Chapter 9. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more adventures. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Chapter 10, South Sweet South. The air was warmer now, carrying with it new smells, sage and juniper and mesquite. Ahead of them, the mountains were growing darker, their snow sparkling in the afternoon sun. Beside the trail, the little group stopped to watch 3 big-horned sheep scramble over the rocks like something out of a dream. Then they continued on, walking toward the setting sun, toward the place where they would make their stand, the place that smelled like home. They had been traveling for weeks, moving south from Utah. Their leader, a man named Caleb, had promised his people a new life in the South, Sweet South. Along the way, they'd left behind the frozen wasteland of winter and moved into warmer weather. Now the sun shone with a fierceness that scolded you if you lingered too long in its glare. The days were filled with birds singing strange songs and the buzzing of insects that had not yet learned to fear humans. At night, around the campfire, the adults talked in low voices of the wonders to come, while the children listened, wide-eyed, clutching their parents' hands. Then one morning they woke up and knew without being told that they had arrived. From their camp they could see nothing but red sand as far as the eye could see, stretching all the way to where the earth met the sky. Above them, the sky was wide and pale and the sun blazed down mercilessly. In the distance, a hawk circled slowly on invisible currents of air. Around them, the silence of the desert pressed in, broken only by the whisper of the wind. Some of the travelers sank to their knees and threw their arms up in the air, overwhelmed by the immensity of it all. But Caleb stood tall, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the dry, crisp air, and smiled. This was it, the land of promise, the place where they would finally be safe. Here the sun beat down on both predator and prey, giving everyone the same scorching look. And here there were no more forests to hide in, no more caves to seek shelter in. Out here in the open, they would be free. Caleb raised his head and shouted, "Look, there are signs everywhere." He pointed to a wash in the distance filled with tracks. The tracks of deer, elk, antelope, bear, mountain lion. "There is plenty of game here," he called out, "and water, too. There must be water nearby. Look." He knelt down beside a saguaro cactus, its arms spread wide like welcoming arms. Using a knife, he made an incision in the top of the cactus and cupped his hand over it. Then he lifted his head and drank deeply. Behind him, the others crowded around, each trying to catch a glimpse of the tracks in the distance or the welcoming arms of the cactus. It was good to be here. It was good to be in a place where the sun was king and everyone had to face its wrath equally. This was not a place for hiding, a place for pretending. Out here, you had to be yourself, just like him. Caleb was born to lead. Even as a boy, he'd been different from the other boys, stronger, braver, more sure of himself. When he was 12 years old, his father had taken him aside and said, "You were meant to lead, Caleb. You have the heart of a chief and the courage of a warrior. One day you will lead our people to a new home." Caleb never forgot those words. And now here he was, leading his people away from the frozen north to this new land of promise. He looked out at his people, at the tired faces, the calloused hands, the weary eyes. He saw the strength in them, the strength that had gotten them through the hard journey, the strength that would help them build a new life here in the South. He felt a surge of pride and satisfaction. He had brought them here. Soon they would forget the hunger and cold of the past months. Here the earth was rich, the game plentiful. The women would gather seeds and berries, the men would hunt and fish. They would live off the fat of the land. His daughter, though, she wouldn't understand any of this. For her, this would always be a strange and hostile place. A few days ago, she'd asked him, "Will we ever get to a place that feels like home, Papa?" He'd ruffled her hair and said, "Soon, little dove, very soon." But really, he didn't know. How could he explain to her that home wasn't a place, it was a feeling of safety, of belonging, of being understood. Could they ever feel that way about this harsh, unforgiving land? Only time would tell. For now, they had to survive. And survival meant food and water. So he turned to the others and said, "We need to find water first, then a place to rest. We'll stay here for now. Men, we're going to build some brush shelters. Women and children, you're to look for signs of water if you find any. Hurry back and tell us, everyone. Be careful out there. This is new territory for us. We don't know what to expect." As the men got to work gathering branches and bushes, the women and children fanned out across the landscape, searching. Little Dove skipped ahead of her mother, her dark braids bouncing. She was small for her age, but her spirit was strong. Her name was Little Dove because when she was born, she'd cried so much that her father had joked that she sounded like a mourning dove. But her mother had insisted that the baby girl was as sweet and gentle as a dove, and that's what they had named her. She was a curious child with wide, dark eyes and a quick smile. She loved to explore, to discover new things. That's why she skipped ahead of the other children, eager to be the first to find something interesting. She had been walking for a while when she saw something in the distance. She wasn't sure what it was, but it looked like a dark shape against the light. Excited, she ran toward it, calling out, "I found something, I found something." But as she got closer, she saw that it was just a rock. Disappointed, she kicked at it, but then she noticed something else. The rock monolith had carvings on it, pictures of animals and strange symbols. She ran back to the others and shouted, "I found something, something really cool." The others gathered around, their faces etched with surprise and wonder. They had not expected to find anything like this in this barren land. Little Dove stood back and watched them, a proud smile on her face. Suddenly, one of the men gasped and pointed. "Look, there's water." Sure enough, at the base of the monolith, hidden among the rocks, was a pool of water. It wasn't much, but it was enough to wet the parched throats of the travelers. As they drank, Little Dove noticed something else. On the ground beside the monolith there were tiny tracks, the tracks of a small animal. She knelt down and traced the tracks with her finger. "What are those?" she asked. "That's the mark of the mountain lion," said one of the men, his voice low. "Stay away from those tracks, child. The mountain lion is a dangerous beast. It's swift and cunning, and it has no mercy." Little Dove nodded seriously. She didn't want to encounter a mountain lion. She knew that even the bravest of warriors feared the mountain lion. It was getting late, so they decided to set up camp near the monolith. While the adults busied themselves with making shelters and starting fires, the children gathered around Little Dove, listening intently as she told them stories about the carvings they had seen. To them, she was a hero, a brave explorer who had discovered a magical place. Little Dove liked being a hero, but she also liked being ordinary. Sometimes she wished she could just be another kid, playing games and chasing butterflies. But she knew that she couldn't. She was different. She was special, and it was up to her to show the others that it was okay to be different, that it was okay to be themselves. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the camp, Caleb addressed his people. "Tomorrow we hunt," he said. "We need food. And remember, be careful. This is new territory for us. We don't know what to expect." Little Dove snuggled close to her mother. She didn't like the sound of that. She wished they were back in their old home where everything was familiar. But she knew that they couldn't stay there, not now. The world was changing and they had to change with it. She looked up at the sky, at the endless expanse of stars. The sky here was different, too, felt like the stars were watching them, waiting for them to make the first move. What would tomorrow bring? Would it be a new beginning or the end of their journey? Only time would tell. For now, they could do nothing but wait. And that's the end of chapter 10. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share it with your friends. Thank you for listening. Chapter 11. The Talking Mountains. For thousands of years, the Apaches had wandered between the Rio Grande and the Little Colorado River, with no permanent home and no master. But now all that was about to change. For 3 days, the Apaches had been traveling through a land that was strange to them when suddenly their chief looked up and said, "There are the mountains we have been looking for." They were called the Sierra Blanca, the White Mountains, or the San Francisco Peaks. Some mountains are born of fire, others of ice. These mountains were born of legend, and to the Apaches they were like an old, wise woman who held secrets from the beginning of time. According to Apache stories, long ago, all the ancestors of the Apache people lived together in one band. One day they decided to climb the highest mountain to pray for guidance. As they climbed higher and higher, the air grew thin and cold. But just before they reached the top, a huge wind blew around them, carrying all of their breath away. They were frozen as statues in the shape of human beings, and the wind became their spirit forever. Now, according to the Apache, the mountains were filled with the dreams and the spirits of their ancestors, and these mountains would talk. You just had to know how to listen. The Apache could hear echoes in the mountains that told them what was happening far away. They could read the weather in the mountains that told them when it would rain or snow, or when the rivers would rise or fall. They could even hear the voices of their ancestors in their dreams, telling them the future. This is how the Apache survived in the mountains. They listened to the wisdom of the mountains. They paid attention to the signs in the rocks and the dirt and the plants and the animals. But more than anything else, they listened to the dreams they had there. One night while camping near the mountains, many of the men had the same dream. In their dream, they heard the voice of their ancestors saying, "Stay here. Make this your home." When they told the others about their dream, everyone agreed that it was time to settle down. And so the band split in two. Some stayed in the mountains and others traveled south. Now, the Apaches who stayed in the mountains split again, with some choosing to live near the sacred White Mountains, and others choosing to live near the equally sacred San Francisco Peaks. We don't know exactly how many bands split off at this time, but we do know that these groups were the ancestors of the Chiricahua, the Mescalero and the Jicarilla Apaches. And eventually they spread out over an area larger than France and Spain combined. In fact, they spread out over some of the most beautiful and inhospitable terrain on Earth. Yet somehow each band managed to make their home there, hunting and gathering and living off the land. It was almost as if the mountains themselves showed them where to go, guiding them to places where they could survive. But why did they choose such difficult territory? That's hard to say. Perhaps they chose it for the same reasons we might choose it today. There's plenty of space and plenty of natural resources. But then again, maybe it was all just an accident. Maybe it was just random chance that led them to some of the most strategically difficult terrain on Earth. Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at the Apache split, and how it created the various bands of Apaches in the Southwest. If you're new here, be sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. In Chapter 9, I told you how the Apaches left their home in the Ohio Valley and traveled west. For many generations, they followed the buffalo herds with no permanent home and no master. But now all that was about to change. For 3 days, the Apaches had been traveling through a land that was strange to them when suddenly their chief looked up and said, "There are the mountains we have been looking for." They were called the Sierra Blanca, the White Mountains, or the San Francisco Peaks. Some mountains are born of fire, others of ice. These mountains were born of legend. To the Apaches, these mountains were like an old, wise woman who held secrets from the beginning of time. According to Apache stories, long ago, all the ancestors of the Apache people lived together in one band. One day they decided to climb the highest mountain to pray for guidance. As they climbed higher and higher, the air grew thin and cold. But just before they reached the top, a huge wind blew around them, carrying all of their breath away. They were frozen as statues in the shape of human beings, and the wind became their spirit forever. Now, according to the Apache, the mountains were filled with the dreams and the spirits of their ancestors, and these mountains would talk. You just had to know how to listen. The Apache could hear echoes in the mountains that told them what was happening far away. They could read the weather in the mountains that told them when it would rain or snow, or when the rivers would rise or fall. They could even hear the voices of their ancestors in their dreams, telling them the future. This is how the Apache survived in the mountains. They listened to the wisdom of the mountains. They paid attention to the signs in the rocks and the dirt and the plants and the animals. But more than anything else, they listened to the dreams they had there. And one night while camping near the mountains, many of the men had the same dream. In their dream they heard the voice of their ancestors saying, "Stay here, make this your home." When they told the others about their dream, everyone agreed that it was time to settle down, and so the band split in two. Some stayed in the mountains and others traveled south. Now, the Apaches who stayed in the mountains split again, with some choosing to live near the sacred White Mountains and others choosing to live near the equally sacred San Francisco Peaks. Now, we don't know exactly how many bands split off at this time, but we do know that these groups were the ancestors of the Chiricahua, the Mescalero, and the Jicarilla Apaches, and eventually they spread out over an area larger than France and Spain combined. They spread out over some of the most beautiful and inhospitable terrain on Earth. In fact, the Apaches spread out over some of the most strategically difficult terrain on Earth. Let me show you a map. If you've ever played the video game Red Dead Redemption 2, you may be familiar with the map of the game's fictional version of the American frontier. At first glance, you may think this is a pretty accurate representation of the American frontier. You can see Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and Colorado and California. But if you look closely, you'll notice something strange. All of the rivers and valleys and plains have been replaced by mountains. The Apaches lived in this exact type of terrain, rugged and remote. And it's hard to imagine a more challenging environment to defend. Imagine trying to build a house here. First you'd need to find a place where you could grow food. Then you'd need to find water. Then you'd need to find somewhere safe to store your food and water and supplies. Finally, you'd need to cut down trees and build a house. But let's say you found everything you needed here. You'd still have to worry about your neighbors. If you wanted to visit your neighbor, you'd have to cross a river. If you wanted to travel any further, you'd have to cross several rivers. Not to mention mountains. Not only were these lands difficult to navigate, but anyone who lived there would be completely isolated from the rest of the world. The Apaches seem to have known this, that they may have chosen this terrain for the same reasons we might choose it today. There's plenty of space and plenty of natural resources, but then again, maybe it was all just an accident. Maybe it was just random chance that led them to some of the most strategically difficult terrain on Earth. Today, the Apaches are still one of the largest Native American tribes in the United States, with over 30,000 enrolled members. Their reservation lands stretch from the White Mountains of Arizona to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of New Mexico to the Sacramento Mountains of southern New Mexico and even into Texas. So next time you're replaying Red Dead Redemption 2 and you're stuck in a canyon somewhere in the mountains, just remember that that's exactly where the Apaches would want you to be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time, remember, you can learn a lot from a talking mountain. As we close out this first volume of our history, It's time to introduce some new characters. People from other tribes are starting to arrive in the region. The Utes come from the north. The Comanche arrive from the east. Various Pueblo groups start trickling into the area from the south and west. Some of them will stay, but many will keep moving until they find a place that suits them better. It's not all fighting and raiding though. There's also peace, trade, and sometimes conflict as everyone tries to find their place in the new world. And the Apaches, once nearly wiped out by disease, become the fierce defenders of the frontier. The oral stories change, too. There's still plenty of tales about stars and constellations, but now there are more stories about how to survive in a harsh land full of dangerous animals. But before we get to those new stories, let's hear one more about Coyote. This one comes from the Zuni people. One day, Coyote was walking through the forest when he saw a big mountain lion crouched behind a log. A young woman was walking nearby, and Coyote knew that if the cat managed to sneak up on her, she would be no match for its strength. So Coyote grabbed his trusty gourd, which could sing and dance at his command, and started to play a lively tune. The cougar couldn't resist the music, and soon got up on its hind legs to dance along. As the two danced back and forth, Coyote sang, "Oh, mountain lion, why do you want to eat the children? You're too good-looking to go around growling like that." The cat finally sat down and explained that it just wanted something to eat. So Coyote said, "Well, why don't you go over there and try to catch one of those rabbits?" But the mountain lion replied, "I'm too tired. I just want to sleep right here." So Coyote suggested, "Well, then you should go up that tree and curl up in that nest of hornets. It's high and dry and no one will bother you." The mountain lion did just that, settling down in the hornet's nest with a satisfied purr. Then Coyote took his revenge by poking the hornet's nest with a sharp stick. The angry hornet stung the mountain lion on the nose, who promptly fell out of the tree, tumbling head over heels until he landed in a prickly pear cactus. The mountain lion tried to climb out, but the thorns tore up his belly, so he rolled over and over until he reached a stream where he could wash off the blood and the prickles. But Coyote followed him and poked him in the side with a stick. As the mountain lion struggled to right himself, Coyote shouted, "Hey, I thought you were supposed to be the great hunter. Do you have to roll around in the water like a baby turtle?" Humiliated and hungry, the mountain lion ran away and vowed never to tangle with Coyote again. Now, as the centuries pass, the Apache are able to put the plague and the devastating war with the Navajo behind them. They still fight with other tribes, but overall life is good. Their numbers are growing and their lands are plentiful. Things are going so well that the Apaches start trading with the newly arrived Utes to the north. The two tribes like each other. They share similar cultures and both have experience living among the mountains, so they decide to form an alliance. But while the Apache and the Ute are becoming friends, a powerful enemy is rising in the east. The Comanche have horses now, and they're using them to raid across the southern plains. For the most part, these raids are against the Mexicans who rule the area. But the Comanche are not picky and will attack anyone who gets in their way. Now, the Apache know the Comanche are coming. They see the dust clouds on the horizon long before the raiders arrive. But when the Apache messengers tell the Utes what they've seen, the Utes don't believe them. The Utes are young to the region and have never seen a Comanche attack. They don't want to believe their new friends would ever lie to them, so they refuse to help. And when the Comanche arrive, it's too late. Their massive war parties wipe out several Ute villages, killing or capturing everyone they can find. But the Apaches had already fled to the mountains and none of their villages were destroyed. From the Ute perspective, the Apaches didn't stick up for their allies. They ran away instead of fighting alongside the Utes. And remember, fighting in this part of the world means fighting on horseback. By Apache standards, the Comanche are showing nothing but courage, but the Utes feel betrayed. So when the Apaches come out of the mountains to look for food and supplies, the Utes attack them. An all-out war almost happens, but cooler heads prevail and the two tribes decide to talk it out. The Apaches understand how the Utes feel, but they can't understand why the Utes didn't come to warn them. If the Utes had gotten out of the valley, they wouldn't have been attacked. The Utes apologize and promise to do better in the future. The Apaches accept their apology, but they both know things will never be the same. The two tribes remain allies, but now there is a bit of tension between them. It's going to take some time to work through all of this. In the meantime, the Apaches are going to need some new songs. They've lost so many people to war and disease that their numbers are low. Every family is struggling to survive and their culture is in danger of dying out. Stories used to be told around campfires, but now there aren't enough people to keep fires burning all night. Some families live deep in caves, hidden from other tribes. Even the storytelling coyote has gone quiet. No one knows what happened to him, but the Apaches need him now more than ever. Without Coyote to teach them, their children won't learn the old ways. Their culture could die out. One night, a young Apache boy looks up at the sky and asks his father why the stars shine. His father pauses to think. He doesn't remember the answer, but he does remember the song his father taught him. He takes his son to the edge of the cave opening and sings, "Stars shining, little light, twinkling bright, burning coal in the sky, flying bird, wings outspread, flying high, flying far, dancing light in the sky afar." After the song, the boy understands. The stars are just tiny coals left by the morning fire. The birds fly high and touch the coals with their wings, causing them to flicker and shine. The boy grows up and remembers his father's lesson. He travels all over the region, learning everything he can about the natural world. When he hears another Apache family gathered around a campfire, he sits with them and teaches them the story of the stars. In turn, he learns how to hunt desert cottontails, how to make corn pollen baskets, and even learns a new myth about how the first deer got its antlers. Over time, the Apaches slowly recover from their losses. They even start trading with the Comanche. They still fight occasionally, but now there's a lot more respect between them. And who is responsible for this cultural revival? Well, it's hard to say. It might have been Coyote all along. Maybe he never left. Maybe he was hiding in plain sight all along, observing the Apaches and waiting for them to rediscover their traditions. The Apache are much stronger now, but they're still vulnerable. Plenty of other tribes are arriving in the region, and there's always the chance of another devastating disease arriving with them. Still, the Apache are hopeful. They've survived so much already, and they're still here telling their stories. They know they have more stories to tell too. They've heard about strange lands beyond the setting sun where there are buffalo as far as the eye can see, and they plan to travel there someday. But that will have to wait until next time. Thanks for watching. To learn more about the Native Americans who lived in this area before European contact, check out the additional resources. Chapter 13. The First Horses, the First Firearms. As we stand here at the confluence of three great rivers in the heart of what is now called Oklahoma, let us imagine it as the year 1540. A large group of Spanish colonists have just entered the story. They bring with them horses, metal, and religion. We know from previous chapters that these three things will play a huge role in the lives of the Apaches and other indigenous nations who encounter them. And today we'll look at how this first contact goes down. The Spanish were exploring and conquering the American Southwest. They had already been in this general area for about 20 years. Their soldiers and settlers had traveled from Mexico into what is now the southwestern United States in search of gold, God, and glory. And they would soon be joined by many others, including Franciscan friars, who want to convert the natives to Christianity, and the Jesuits, who want to do the same thing, but prefer to live among the people they are trying to convert. Before long, the Spanish will establish missions where they can teach natives the ways of the Catholic Church. They'll also build presidios, which are small forts used by soldiers to protect the missions and settlements from attack. These missions and settlements will grow to become large towns and cities such as San Antonio, Texas, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Tucson, Arizona. And all around them will be ranches where horses graze and crops grow. All of this will change the face of the Southwest forever. But for the Apaches and other tribes, it's a whole new world. Imagine that you are an Apache living in the 16th century. Your world is vast and open. There are no large towns or cities, only small villages of your people scattered across the landscape. There are no horses except the ones you have ridden since birth, nor firearms, nor iron tools or metal of any kind. Life is difficult, but it is good. You have everything you need to survive and thrive. Then suddenly your world changes. Strangers arrive speaking a strange language and riding strange animals with hard, shiny faces and tails like whips. These strangers are not like anyone you have ever seen before. They wear clothes made of a strange material, ornaments of brightly colored beads and feathers, and carry weapons that shoot fire and make terrible noises. They are mounted on animals with hard, shiny faces and tails like whips. These animals are fast and powerful and seem almost magical. They are unlike any animal you have ever seen before. They are horses, and while the Apaches will take some time to get used to the horses, they will accept them very quickly into their culture. So much so that they will adopt the horse as a sacred animal, similar to the way some Native American cultures view the buffalo. This will make sense when you consider the importance of horses to the Apache way of life. Horses will allow the Apaches to travel much farther and much faster. They'll allow them to gather food more efficiently. They'll allow them to defend themselves better, and they'll allow them to fight back against those who would do them harm, such as the Spanish. The Apaches will learn how to ride horses almost immediately, and will use them to great advantage. But the Apaches are not the only ones who are excited about horses. The Spanish are equally excited about them. Horses are big business. Many Spanish colonists will make their fortunes selling horses to Native American tribes. In fact, horses will be so important to the Apaches that they will eventually come up with a name for them. They will call them big dogs who carry you. This is a clever name because horses are neither dogs nor do they carry you like a dog might carry a small animal in its mouth. But horses are man's best friend and will serve the Apaches well for many years. There is a problem though. The Apaches don't have enough horses. If they did, they could easily defend themselves against the Spanish, but they don't. So they must find a way to steal them, and they do. Soon the Apaches are raiding Spanish settlements, stealing horses and supplies. This makes the Spanish angry and they begin to retaliate. They send out troops to punish the Apaches, but the Apaches are too quick and too elusive. They disappear into the vast wilderness and the Spanish cannot find them. The Spanish build more presidios and send more troops, but nothing seems to work. The Apaches are simply too good at hiding. They know the land like the back of their hands, and they use this knowledge to their advantage. The Spanish are becoming increasingly frustrated, and they need a better way to deal with the Apaches. They need something that can reach the Apaches and destroy them without the Spanish ever having to lay eyes on them. The Spanish need a weapon of mass destruction. What they need is firearms. When the Apaches first encounter firearms, they are terrified. They have never heard anything like them before. The noise and power of the guns terrify the Apaches and they run away in fear. But they are also curious and they want to know more. Some Apaches are brave enough to approach the guns and try to figure out how they work. And when they do, they are amazed. These strange weapons shoot fire and make terrible noises. They are unlike anything the Apaches have ever seen before. They are firearms, and they will change the face of warfare forever. The Apaches will learn how to use firearms, and they will use them to great advantage. They will use them to defend themselves against the Spanish and other tribes, and they will use them to hunt buffalo and other animals. Firearms will become an important part of Apache culture and history. Unfortunately, the Apaches don't have enough firearms. If they did, they could easily defend themselves against the Spanish. But they don't. So they must find a way to steal them, and they do. Soon the Apaches are raiding Spanish settlements, stealing horses and supplies. This makes the Spanish angry and they begin to retaliate. They send out troops to punish the Apaches, but the Apaches are too quick and too elusive. They disappear into the vast wilderness and the Spanish cannot find them. The Spanish build more presidios and send more troops, but nothing seems to work. The Apaches are simply too good at hiding. The Spanish need a better way to deal with the Apaches. They need something that can reach the Apaches and destroy them without the Spanish ever having to lay eyes on them. The Spanish need a weapon of mass destruction. What they need is firearms. The irony is that the Spanish are bringing the weapon that will be used to conquer them right into the hands of their enemies. The Apache tribes who receive horses and firearms will become the most mobile and deadly indigenous nation in North America. But that day is still a ways off. For now, the Apaches are simply learning how to use these new tools. When the Apaches first encounter the Franciscans, they are suspicious of them. They don't know what the Franciscans want or why they are here. The Apaches have been burned by the conquistadors and are wary of strangers. The Franciscans, for their part, are eager to convert the Apaches to Christianity. They try to be friendly and helpful, but the Apaches are not buying it. The Apaches are suspicious of the Franciscans and their motives. They don't trust them and they keep their distance. The Franciscans, undeterred, continue to try to convert the Apaches. They build missions and offer the Apaches the chance to learn about Jesus Christ. But the Apaches are resistant. The Apaches are proud people and they are not about to submit to the Spanish. They will not abandon their beliefs and traditions for the Spanish way of life. The Franciscans, while disappointed, respect the Apaches' decision. They know that the Apaches are a strong, proud people, and they will not force them to convert. Instead, the Franciscans will live among the Apaches and learn their language and customs. They will also document their findings and send them back to Spain. These writings will be the first detailed accounts of the Apaches and their way of life. One of the most interesting things about Apache culture is their oral tradition. The Apaches have a rich tradition of storytelling, and they use stories to teach their children about their history and culture. The Apaches also use stories to remember and honor their ancestors. The Apaches believe that their ancestors are watching over them, and that they can help the Apaches in times of need. The Apaches will often tell stories about their ancestors as a way of honoring them and asking for their help. The Apaches believe that their ancestors are powerful and that they can help the Apaches in times of need. The Apaches will often tell stories about their ancestors as a way of honoring them and asking for their help. Even as pressure mounts from the Spanish, the Apaches will continue to pass down their stories and traditions to future generations. Chapter 13. The First Horses, the First Firearms is brought to you by our generous supporters. If you would like to help support the series, please visit our support page. Coming up next time on Pre-Contact, the Apaches will encounter another tribe with a taste for horses, the Comanche. Don't miss it. Thank you for watching. For Pre-Contact, it's me. Until next time, remember to keep an open mind, a sharp eye, and a free heart. Chapter 14. Remembering the North. Even as they become desert dwellers, the Apache never forget the North. Even as they become desert dwellers, the Apache never forget the North. When the Apache sing their songs of migration, they're still singing about snow and stars and rivers that they haven't seen in generations. When they dream, they still walk south, and when they die, some say they walk back north. They carry the North inside them. Now, whether or not that's literally true doesn't matter. What matters is that they believe it to be true. And we know that because every generation, the story has been passed down from parents to children. The memory of the North lives on through oral histories and songs and dreams and dances. It's part of who they are. For decades, scholars have debated how much of these stories are history and how much are metaphor, but to the Apache, it's all true. It's their history, and it's time to tell it. I'm the host, and this is our series, where we explore the unseen world that indigenous people have inhabited for thousands of years. In Chapter 12, we learned about the Great Migration from the North that happened about 7 or 8 generations ago. The Apache were coming south. In Chapter 13, we saw what they found. A land already occupied by other peoples, cultures, and nations. But even after all this time, the Apache remember where they came from. They remember the cold winters and the short summers of the North. They remember the big rivers and the lush forests. They remember the salmon streams and the herds of buffalo that moved through the valleys. They remember the mountains that reached up through the clouds and the stone boxes filled with treasures left behind by their ancestors. Most of all, they remember home. Some things get lost over generations, but memories of the North don't. So let's go back there together. Let's see what the Apache saw when they dreamed of home. First, the mountains. Big, jagged peaks that scraped the sky. They were made of hard, igneous rock, granite, basalt, obsidian, pumice. Their slopes were covered with grasses and bushes and stunted trees. Above timberline, the rocks were bare except for patches of clinging snow. Summer snows, winter snows, eternal snows. Some peaks had both, some had neither. The land between the mountains was high desert, dotted with springs and streams. There were meadows full of flowers and herds of animals: deer, antelope, elk, bear, mountain lion, wolf, eagle, all kinds of birds. This was the heart of the Apache homeland, a place of rivers and springs, forests and open meadows, animals and birds and fish and plants, a place with enough food to sustain many people. The rivers flowed north to the great salt water. They were wide and deep. The best fishing was in the spring when the waters ran high and cold from the melting snows. When the sun beat down on the summer, the water level dropped and the fishing got tougher. Still, the rivers teemed with fish, trout, salmon, suckers, lamprey, catfish, sturgeon, even whales swam upstream to spawn. The salmon were the most popular. In fact, there was a time when so many salmon swam upstream that the Indians could hardly keep up with all the fish. That's when they invented the weir. It was a fence built across the river. It funneled the fish into baskets where they could be taken out and dried and stored for the winter. On either side of the rivers were forests. The trees grew tall and thick. The woods were dark and cool and damp. The forest smelled like pine and cedar and sage. The trees were a mix of conifer and hardwood, Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, western hemlock, western white pine, sugar pine, incense cedar, California red, wood, grand fir, western larch, lodgepole pine, all kinds of oak and maple and cottonwood. The hardwood grew along the streams and the foothills. The conifers thrived in the higher elevations. Most of the Apache lived in the open areas near the rivers. They hunted and gathered there. They fished and trapped and made their homes. The forests were home to the bears and the mountain lions and the wolves. The Apache respected those animals. They knew not to go into the woods alone. They always went in groups. They made lots of noise. They carried bear spray. not because they wanted to hurt the animals, but because they didn't want to become bear bait either. When the forest was being itself, when it rumbled and roared and flashed lightning, then the Apache knew it was a dangerous place to be. They sought shelter then. They stayed away from the trees. They didn't go into the rivers either. Not when the water was high and raging. Not when it overflowed its banks and threatened to wash away their villages. The Apache respected the rivers, too. They knew when they were being themselves. They knew when the rivers would provide for them and when they would demand respect. In return, the Apache gave back to the rivers. When they fished, they took only what they needed. When they used the riverbanks for their tippers, they tried not to disturb the plants and the animals that lived there. They were careful not to pollute the rivers. They knew that if they didn't take care of the rivers would take care of them. So when the Apache remember the North, they remember the rivers, the springs, the fish, the forests, the animals, the meadows. That's what they remember because that's what they miss the most. Some say the rivers pulled them south. Others say the salmon called to them. But whatever the reason, the pull was strong and the journey was long. It began with a split. The band split. Some wanted to stay in the north, others wanted to go south. Finally, the decision was made. Those who wanted to go south would follow the river. Those who wanted to stay put would stay put. Then they walked south until they could walk no more. Then they slept. When they woke up, they walked south some more. And when they got tired again, they slept again. For many moons, the two bands traveled like that. Sometimes they stopped to hunt or fish or gather roots. Sometimes they fought with each other. Sometimes they were bored. Those who wanted to stay put were happy at first. The travelers were noisy and messy and slow. But as time passed, the travelers became legendary. Stories were told about their bravery and skill and endurance. Soon, everyone wanted to be like the travelers. Everyone wanted to go south. One day, the band that wanted to stay put decided to go south, too. They followed the river for many moons. Eventually, they found the travelers. They asked them, how much farther? The travelers replied, just beyond the next ridge. So the two bands walked on, side by side, brother to brother, until they could walk no more. Then they sat down on a nearby stone and waited for the sun to set. When it did, they saw something strange. Right before their eyes, a coyote emerged from the darkness. He was tall and strong, with fur as black as night. His eyes shone like stars. "Who are you?" asked one of the travelers. "I am the guardian of the south," said the coyote. "Why do you want to come here?" "We want to find a new home," they replied. "You may not need one," said the coyote. "Stay here and live with me." The Apache were honored to be asked, but they couldn't agree. They had to keep moving. "Very well," said the coyote. "Then I will help you on your journey." He led them through the night, and at dawn they could see the end of their journey. It was a beautiful valley with a sparkling river running through it. Wild horses grazed in the meadows. Pronghorn antelope leaped through the hills. Deer and elk stood silently in the trees. The mountains rose majestically in the distance. Everything was perfect. "This is our home now," they cried. They raced through the valley, laughing and playing, until the coyote called out, "Stop! You may not stay here." "Why not?" they asked. "Because this is sacred ground," he said. "Only the Apaches who came before you can live here. You must go farther south." The Apache argued, but the coyote wouldn't budge. He led them farther south until they reached a dry creek bed. "You may live here," he said. They thanked him and settled down. The journey was finally over. They named their new home Nukatsavi, the place where we stopped. The coyote kept his word. He protected the Apache from other tribes, from wild animals, from hunger and thirst and cold. He showed them how to use the plants for food and medicine. He helped them build houses and snares and bows and arrows. With his help, they thrived, they prospered, they grew in numbers. And every year, when the snows melted in the north and the salmon returned to the rivers, they remembered the north. They told stories of the great migration. They sang songs of the rivers and the mountains and the forests. They honored the animals that guided them south, and they thanked the coyote for bringing them home. Conclusion: the trail never ends. It simply folds in on itself, revealing more of the world and its stories to those who have the time and the curiosity to listen. For the last 60 or so minutes, we've been walking along this trail, tracing the edges of the maps that guide our lives. But now it's time to stop for a while. Time to sit by the fire and let the silence do some of the talking. You might think of yourself as a traveler, someone who walks from here to there, from one place to another, and certainly you do that. But maybe you can also think of yourself as a little bit more than that, something that becomes the places you visit, a little piece of those places woven into who you are. After all, the land carries memory and stories. Keep walking even when our feet are still. Every step we take writes us into the places we visit, allowing us to keep moving forward even when we don't take another physical step. We become a part of these places, adding our own stories to the tapestry of the land, and we carry a piece of them within us until we walk some other path. And so the trail never really ends. It's always there waiting for us to continue walking it, waiting for us to add new stories to the ones already being told there. The question is, are you listening to those stories? Are you paying attention to the wisdom the land is trying to share with you? Or are you too busy worrying about where you're going, what you need to get done, what problems you have to solve? The trail doesn't care. It'll be here long after you're gone, long after all of us are gone. The trees will continue to grow, and the wind will keep whispering its secrets to those who are willing to listen. It's easy to get caught up in our own little dramas, to worry about whether we're on the right path or to doubt whether we can make it to the end of the trail. But maybe that's not the point of the journey. Maybe it's not about reaching the destination, but about everything we experience and learn along the way. When we take the time to appreciate the beauty around us, to listen to the stories the land has to tell, we discover that there is magic all around us, even in the most ordinary of places. It's like when you read a good book. You know the story is over, but you still want to linger in the world the author created because you've grown to love it. In a way, that's how it is with the places we visit and the people we meet on this trail. They become a part of us, and we carry a piece of them within us wherever we go. Think back to the very beginning of the trail. Do you remember the first images that greeted you? Perhaps it was a blanket of sparkling snow, a vast canopy of twinkling stars, or the gentle whisper of the wind through the trees. These early impressions set the tone for your journey, shaping your expectations and stirring your curiosity. Just as the first notes of a symphony introduce the main themes, these initial experiences on the trail hinted at the wonders that lay ahead. As you continued walking, you encountered new sights, sounds, and sensations. Each step took you deeper into the heart of winter, enveloping you in its beauty and tranquility. The crunch of snow under your boots, the sight of a cardinal flashing red against a backdrop of white, the delicate patterns of frost on a window pane, these sensory delights became the soundtrack of your journey. They not only marked your progress along the physical trail, but also wove a tapestry of memories that would stay with you long after your journey ended. The wind, that invisible force, played a particularly enchanting role throughout your trek. At times it sang softly, sharing secrets only the trees could understand. At others, it picked up the pace, swirling around you in a playful dance. Whether it was a gentle caress or a boisterous frolic, the wind became a constant companion, guiding you forward and reminding you of the wild beauty that surrounded you. If you've made it this far on the trail, if you've allowed yourself to get lost in the wintry landscape and the whispering wind, then you've already experienced more than most. You've outwalked most of your ancestors, those who didn't have the time or the curiosity to explore the world around them. You've taken the time to appreciate the small things, to marvel at the intricate details that make life so beautiful. You've sat by the fire and let the silence do some of the talking. You've closed your eyes and listened to the wind whispering its ancient tales. And in doing so, you've discovered something truly magical, the magic that lies in the journey itself. I know it's hard to believe, but we're almost at the end of our walk together. Soon we'll have to part ways and go our separate directions. But before we do, I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Thank you for letting the wind guide your steps and for listening to the stories the trees have shared with us. Thank you for taking the time to appreciate the beauty that surrounds us, for finding joy in the little things, for walking this path and carrying these memories within you. Wherever your path in life may lead you from this point forward, may the lessons we've learned on this trail continue to serve you well. May the tranquility of the winter woods bring you peace. May the stars above inspire your dreams, and may the whispering wind forever remind you of the magic that lies in the journey itself. Now let's take a moment to close our eyes and let the trail continue on without us. As you do so, I want you to think about all the amazing things you've seen and experienced along the way. Remember the crispness of the air in your lungs and the crunch of snow under your boots. Recall the comforting glow of the fire and the playful dance of the wind through the trees. And as you breathe deeply, imagine these sensations enveloping you once again, bringing you back to this peaceful moment in the woods. And then, as you continue to breathe deeply, let your thoughts drift to the vastness of the night sky. Picture the countless stars twinkling above, each one a distant sun with its own story to tell. Allow the immensity of the universe to fill your awareness, reminding you of your place within the grand tapestry of existence. As you gaze up at the celestial expanse, let a sense of wonder and humility wash over you. Feel a deep connection to all those who have stood beneath the same sky, pondering the mysteries of the cosmos. And finally, let your attention return to the gentle sound of the wind as it whispers through the trees. Close your eyes and let the trail continue without you. The stars are still walking, my friend, and so are you. With each step you take, you carry a piece of the trail within you, a reminder of the magic that lies in the journey itself. Thank you for walking this path with me today. Until next time, may the wind be ever at your back and the stars light your way.